Welcome to the short video on setting a winning strategy for the design of your Microsoft Teams environment and your approach to deploying Teams. Whether you've established a controlled Teams creation policy or simply using the out-of-the-box policy of open team creation, you can dramatically enhance your Microsoft Teams deployment success with a few simple planning steps. Here at First Call, we've experienced a number of clients who have taken a number of different paths for their team's deployment. Some had great success, others all but failed. We've condensed these different approaches into three basic categories. There is one category or approach that we have not included in our recap, and unfortunately, it's the one that we frequently see when we encounter failing or failed Teams deployments. That's the approach of having no design and no established method. These deployments typically turn on the Microsoft Teams application for their employees, and the employees then adapt or adopt the Microsoft Teams application into their working habits as they deem appropriate. Again, not on the slide, not a recommended non-approach. No matter which approach you choose for your company, all successful Teams deployments should include a design for your Teams environment. As we call it, the wildlands approach is to create an initial design for your Teams environment and then simply turn on the Teams application for your employees to operate within your design. A more structured and managed approach is what we refer to as the phased approach. From your initial design, you select specific teams to adapt and adopt the new technology. An even more structured methodology is what we refer to as the pilot group approach. Very similar to a phased approach, but the first phase is typically focused on a small group having an extremely clear understanding of their group's purpose and or objective, and the group is typically in a leadership position within the company. In our experience, the most successful Teams deployments always start with the company leadership as the pilot group. This group then deploys the company-wide team to expose the rest of the company to the new paradigm. After that, individual department heads or functional group leaders can begin building and deploying their own individual teams. In the first two slides, I'd mentioned the need for a design of your team's environment. Having a good team's environment design can be the difference between the success or failure of your team's deployment. Your team's design will evolve over time as your business model changes, your organization changes, or the complexity of your employee hierarchy evolves and changes. In the balance of this presentation, we're going to share our experience in the most effective methods for you to create your team's environment design, whether it is by organizational unit, functional group, by project, product, or service, or some combination of any of those. The key to a successful design is what we refer to as the Teams Litmus test. Before we discuss the various approaches to designing your team's environment, let's first review the key criteria for determining if we really want to create a team or not. We want to consider the creation of a new team when the group of employees who are going to make up the team has a documented shared purpose or objective. When the group of employees who's going to make up the team has the need for shared file collaboration related to that shared purpose or objective. When the group of employees who's going to make up the team has the need for interactive communication and collaboration related to the purpose or objective. When there are no other existing teams that have the same or similar purpose or objective. When the employee owner of the team is clearly defined. These are the decision makers who are accountable for the purpose or objective of the team. And lastly, when the employee members of the team are clearly defined, these would be the contributors or participants in meeting that team's purpose or objective. If these conditions are not met, then we should think twice about creating a team or adding a team to your environment design. Digging into the various approaches that one can take when coming up with your team's environment design, we're going to take a look at the organizational approach. The organizational approach is easily applicable to companies that have defined organizational unit structure. As long as an existing organizational unit has more than one employee, it is a potential candidate for a team within your design. Reviewing your organization unit chart, we should be able to understand each unit's purpose or objective. Each unit should have a clearly established owner or leader, and all of the employees within that unit should be quantifiable. The assumption that we're making is that each organizational unit includes all of the employees of its child or subunits. So in our example, each of the employees of the organizational unit company include all of the employees for all of the boxes underneath company. The functional approach to identifying potential teams for your team's environment design is by looking at the key functions within your company. For example, many small and mid-sized businesses can ill afford to have a full-time organizational unit for human resources. Instead, they rely on various key people in the organization to establish and maintain policy, to administer policy, and perform record keeping and other traditional HR functions. In this scenario, the company should consider including an HR team inside their team's environment design. The owner of the team would be the individual employee who is ultimately accountable for the HR function and administration, while the team members would be comprised of the employees who participate in establishing and administering HR policies and practices. Similarly, most companies have a cadre of employees, typically led by the owner or the president or CEO of the company, who are charged with establishing company strategy and leading the company to deploy the strategy. In some cases, the employees who participate in the leadership effort are those who lead organizational units. In other cases, the organizational units may not be clearly defined, and the employee who participates in the company leadership find themselves wearing a number of organizational hats. Some companies have discrete groups or teams for their officers and or their boards, while there are other companies who manage complex or high-risk projects that find themselves benefiting from creating project teams for each key project. As long as the functional team has a clear, documented purpose or objective, the leader of the team is clearly defined, and the employees who participate in the effort to meet the team's objective can be defined, you should consider creating a team in your design for this functional group. Irrespective of how you determine what your team's environment design will initially look like, we strongly recommend that your design include two essential teams. First, the company team. This is a team whose members include all of your active employees, and we strongly encourage you to never invite guests. Second, the leadership team. The leadership team should always be your pilot group, and ultimately, they become the champions of a successful Microsoft Teams deployment. This team creates strategies, they make decisions, and they lead by example. Whether your initial team's environment design has one team or 100 teams, know that your design will likely change as your organization evolves. The only incorrect design is the one that was not created. As a final word of advice, while you create your initial team's design, the rule of thumb, less is more, applies. Starting your team's deployment with fewer teams provides you with greater ability to manage your deployment, educate your users, and adopt the new team's operating paradigm. Adding new teams to your design is far easier than retracting or undoing poorly designed teams later. Thank you for your time today. We hope that this short video has helped you frame up your approach for developing a team's deployment strategy that will be very effective for your organization.